Come to the next category, perfect. Now, as I told you, in every continuous sentence in the passive voice, being must be there. In every perfect sentence in the passive voice, been must be there. And if you find present perfect, past perfect, future perfect, if you find any perfect sentence in the passive voice without been, eliminate that option. Right? Simple. In every perfect sentence in the passive voice, been must be there. That means been comes in the passive voice to denote perfect tense. Being comes in the passive voice to denote continuous tense. Been comes in the passive voice to denote perfect tense. Come to the first one, present perfect. The structure of present perfect in the active voice is subject plus has to have plus V3. We have discussed in the topic tenses. The structure of present perfect in the passive voice is has to have plus been plus V3. Has to have plus been plus V3 is present perfect in the passive voice. Been because it is perfect tense, V3 because it is passive voice. Clear? Come to the statement. She has slept in a bed. In a bed or on a bed? Now, I sit in a chair or I sit on a chair? Both are correct actually. If it is a chair that has arms, it must be in a chair. If it is a chair that does not have arms, it must be on a chair. Usually we say I sit on a chair. We use in when a sentence says armchair. So I sit on a chair, I sit in an armchair. You know how a bed will be. This is how a bed will be. The mattress will be here and we sleep here. A bed usually has arms, so it must be in a bed. We sleep in a bed. We sleep dash the mattress on the mattress. We sleep in a bed on the mattress. So she has slept in a bed. The subject here is she. The verb here is has slept in. A bed is the object, subject, verb object, active voice. Slept is a verb, in is a preposition. So slept in becomes a phrase. And we cannot divide the words in a phrase. So she has slept in a bed is active voice, present perfect. In the passive voice also it must be present perfect. This idea in the passive voice becomes a bed has been slept in phrase. Slept in by her. A bed has been slept by her is wrong. A bed has been slept in by her sounds absolutely incorrect, but it's completely fine. A bed has been slept in by her. Her bed is the object here. Has been slept in is a verb here. Her is the subject here. Object, verb, subject, passive voice. Slept is both V2 and V3. Sleep, slept, slept. In this case, slept is in the V3 form because sentence is in the passive voice. So has been slept in is has plus been plus V3, and has plus been plus V3 is present perfect in the passive voice. So bed has been slept in by. The next one. They have looked into the cases. They, the pronoun they is the subject here, doer of the action. Have looked into is the verb here. The cases is the object here. So subject, verb, object, active voice. Looked into, looked is a verb, into is a preposition. So looked into becomes a phrase. They have looked into the cases, active voice, present perfect. Subject plus have plus V3. Subject plus have plus V3 is present perfect, active voice. So in the passive voice also it must be in the present perfect tense. So this sentence in the passive voice becomes the cases have been looked into phrase. Have been looked into by them. The cases have been looked by them is wrong. The cases have been looked into by them. The cases is the object here. Have been looked into is the verb here. Them is the subject here. Object, verb, subject, passive voice. Looked is V3 here because sentence is in the passive voice. So have been looked into is have plus been plus V3, and have plus been plus V3 is present perfect passive voice. Clear? This is present perfect active voice and passive voice. Now come to the next category. Next one, past perfect. The structure of past perfect in the active voice is subject plus had plus V3. The structure of present perfect in the passive voice is has to have plus been plus V3. So what must be the structure of past perfect in the passive voice? Had plus been plus V3. The past tense of both has and have is had. So replace has and have with had. That's it. Had plus been plus V3. Been because it is perfect tense. V3 because it is passive voice. So if a past perfect statement is in the passive voice, it must be in this structure. Had plus been plus V3. Clear? Now come to this statement. She had agreed to the proposal. Subject, verb, object, active voice. Agreed is a verb. To is a preposition. So agreed to becomes a phrase. We agree with the person. We agree to something. The proposal means something. So agreed to the proposal. She had agreed to the proposal. Active voice past perfect. In the passive voice also it must be past perfect. So this sentence in the passive voice becomes: the proposal had been agreed to by her. The proposal had been agreed to. Agreed by her is wrong. Phrase agreed to is a phrase. The proposal had been agreed to by her. The proposal is the object here. Had been agreed to is a verb here. Her is a subject here. Object, verb, subject, passive voice. Agreed is V3 here. The sentence is in the passive voice. So had been agreed to is had plus been plus V3, and had plus been plus V3 is past perfect passive voice. Clear? Come to the next one, future perfect. The structure of future perfect in the active voice is subject plus will or shall plus have plus V3. The structure of future perfect in the passive voice is will or shall plus have plus been plus V3. Will or shall plus have plus been plus V3 is the structure of future perfect in the passive voice. I repeat, been because it is perfect tense, V3 because it is passive voice. So if a future perfect statement is in the passive voice, it must be in this structure: will or shall plus have plus been plus V3. Clear? Now come to this statement. He will have listened to her. The subject here is he plus will plus have plus V3. Subject plus will plus have plus V3. Subject plus subject plus will plus have plus V3 is future perfect in the active voice. Listened is a verb. To is a preposition. So when listen to becomes a phrase. Now we listen music is wrong. Must be we listen to music. I listen to you, they listen to me, etc. So he will have listened to her. Active voice future perfect. In the passive voice also it must be future perfect. This sentence, the same idea in the future perfect tense in the passive voice becomes he will have listened to her becomes she will have been listened to phrase by him. She will have been listened by him is wrong. The words in the phrase cannot be divided. She will have been listened to by him. She is the object here. Will have been listened to is a verb here. Him is the subject here. Object, verb, subject, passive voice. Listened is V2 and V3. Listen, listened, listened. In this case, listened is in the V3 form because sentence is in the passive voice. So will have been listened to is will plus have plus been plus V3, And will plus have plus been plus V3 is future perfect is in the passive voice. So she will have been listened to by him is future perfect in the passive voice. So with this, the perfect category is also done. I repeat, in every perfect tense, in the perfect sentence in the passive voice, been must be there. If you find any perfect sentence in the passive voice without been, you just eliminate that option. Clear? Now come to the last category, perfect continuous. First one is present perfect continuous. The structure of present perfect continuous in the active voice is subject plus, you know this, what we discussed in the topic tenses. Subject plus has to have plus been plus V1 plus ing. This is present perfect continuous in the active voice. Past perfect continuous in the active voice is subject plus had plus been plus V1 plus ing. This is past perfect continuous in the active voice. Future perfect continuous in the active voice is subject plus will or shall plus have plus been plus V1 plus ing. This is future perfect continuous in the active voice. Now a perfect continuous sentence. Present perfect continuous, past perfect continuous, future perfect continuous. A perfect continuous sentence cannot be converted into passive voice. There is no passive voice in perfect continuous. That means a future continuous sentence, I told you earlier. A future continuous sentence cannot be converted into passive voice. Similarly, a perfect continuous sentence, present perfect continuous, past perfect continuous, future perfect continuous, a perfect continuous sentence also cannot be converted into passive voice. In the case of voice, you will never find any question on perfect continuous category or future continuous category. That is for sure. Clear? So this is all about the structure part. The structure of each and every tense in every category in all the three tense in both active voice and passive voice. The structure of every tense, every category in both active voice and passive voice. As really you need to by heart the structures. There's no choice for you. Clear? Now, I told you earlier, in every perfect sentence in the passive voice, been must be there. That's what I said. The structure of present perfect in the passive voices has to have plus been plus V3. Past perfect passive voices had plus been plus V3. Future perfect passive voices will or shall plus have plus been plus V3. Yes. Come to this one once again. Present perfect passive voices has to have plus been plus V3. Been is an auxiliary verb here because V3 is the main verb here. So been becomes an auxiliary verb. Past perfect passive voices had plus been plus V3. Been is an auxiliary verb because V3 is the main verb. Similarly, future perfect passive voices will or shall plus have plus been plus V3. Been is an auxiliary verb because V3 is the main. That means been as an auxiliary verb comes in the passive voice in the perfect tense. Been as an auxiliary verb comes in the passive voice in the perfect tense. Clear? Now come to the perfect continuous category. The structure of present perfect continuous in the active voices, subject plus has to have plus been plus V1 plus ing. The structure of past perfect continuous in the active voices, subject plus had plus been plus V1 plus ing. The structure of future perfect continuous in the active voices, subject plus will or shall plus have plus been plus V1 plus ing. Clear? Now come to this once again. Present perfect continuous active voices, subject plus has to have plus been plus V1 plus ing. Been is an auxiliary verb here because V1 plus ing is the main verb. Past perfect continuous active voice, subject plus had plus been plus V1 plus ing. The same reason, been is an auxiliary verb because V1 plus ing is the main verb. Future perfect continuous active voice, subject plus will or shall plus have plus been plus V1 plus ing. Been is an auxiliary verb because V1 plus ing is the main verb. That means Been as an auxiliary verb comes in the active voice in the perfect continuous category. Been as an auxiliary verb comes in the passive voice in the perfect category. Been as an auxiliary verb comes in the active voice in the perfect continuous category. Clear? So been as an auxiliary verb comes in the active voice in the perfect continuous tense. Been as an auxiliary verb comes in the passive voice in the perfect tense. Clear? Right. So that's about the structure part. Come to this one. He has been to Kerala. Been is a main verb auxiliary verb here. Main verb because there's no main verb after been. So been in this sentence becomes a main. I told you in the perfect tense, I told you many times. While discussing tenses, subject, agreement, conditional sentence, I told you, pronouns as well. In the perfect tense, after has, have or had, what must be there? V3 must be there. When there's no V3 after has, have or had, then been will act as a main verb in the V3 form. When there's no main verb after has, have or had, been acts as a main verb in the V3 form. Been is a main verb here because there's no main verb after been. So has been is has plus V3. And has plus V3 is present perfect in the active voice. By heart the structures. Has plus V3 is present perfect in the active voice. So he has been to Kerala is in the active voice, present perfect tense. He has been to Kerala means he has gone to Kerala. I have been to Mumbai means I have gone to Mumbai. So he has been to Kerala is active voice, present perfect. Passive voice also it must be present perfect. And passive voice, present perfect structures has, so, have plus been plus V3. Been is an auxiliary verb here because V3 is the main verb. So present perfect passive voice is this structure, has, so, have plus been plus V3. He has been to Kerala. This sentence in the passive voice, this idea in the passive voice becomes Kerala. Now been is a main verb here, to is a preposition, so been to becomes a phrase. Kerala has been to phrase by him. Kerala has been to by him sounds incorrect but completely fine. Now this been is different from this been. This is the auxiliary verb. This is the main verb in the V3 form. So Kerala has been to by him. Kerala is the object here. Has been to is the verb here. The first been is the auxiliary verb. The second been is a main verb in the V3 form. So has been to is a verb here. Him is the subject here. Object, verb, subject, passive voice. Has been to is has plus been plus V3, and has plus been plus V3 is present perfect in the passive voice. Getting it? Just blindly follow the structures. That's it. Come next one. He has been helped. Been is a main verb, auxiliary verb here. Auxiliary verb here because helped is a main verb. Clear? Now understand the meaning. You can find out whether it is active voice or passive voice based on the structure as well as the meaning. He has been helped means he did the action or received the action. He has been helped means he received the action. Receiver means object. Object comes at the beginning in the passive voice. That's one reason. Then has been helped is has plus been plus V3. There is nothing like has plus been plus V2. It is has plus been plus V3. One more reason, this sentence is in the passive voice. V1 and V2 will never come in the passive voice. So V3 is helped is in the V3 form here. And has plus been plus V3 is present perfect in the passive voice. So this sentence is in the passive voice, present perfect tense. In the active voice also it must be in the present perfect tense. He has been held he has been helped, there's no subject here. We cannot frame a sentence in the active voice without a subject, because the sentence in the active voice begins with a subject. So there's no subject. Now there's no subject in the given statement in the passive voice. In the passive voice, if there is no subject, in the active voice we can go for any subject, like someone, somebody. And actually, in fact, there's no need for us to go for any subject. It will be given in the options. Our task is just to find it out. That's it. Because there's no need for us to create any option. All the options will be given to us. Our task is just to find out the correct answer. The best answer, in fact, if there is more than one correct answer. So in the passive voice, I repeat, in the passive voice, if there is no subject, in the active voice, we can go for any subject. I am using the subject somebody. Passive voice, present perfect. In the active voice also, it must be present perfect tense. This idea in the active voice becomes somebody has helped him. Somebody has helped him. Somebody has or somebody have. Somebody is an indefinite pronoun. I gave it in the list of indefinite pronouns as a separate rule in subject-verb agreement. Indefinite pronouns are taken as singular, so verb must also be singular. Somebody has helped him. Somebody is the subject here. Has helped is a verb here. Him is the object here. So subject, verb, object, active voice. Has helped is has plus V3. There's nothing like has plus V2, is has plus V3. And has plus V3 is present perfect in the active voice. So he has been helped is present perfect passive voice. Somebody has helped him is present perfect active voice. Getting it? Come to the next one. Someone killed her. Active passive. Someone killed her means someone did the action or received the action. Did the action. Subject comes at the beginning in the active voice. Killed is a verb here. Her is the object. Subject, verb, object, active voice. Simple past tense. Subject plus V2. Nothing like subject plus V3 in active voice. It's always subject plus V2. Active voice, simple past tense. Passive voice also it must be simple past tense. And simple past in the passive voice is was so verb plus V3. This sentence in the passive voice becomes someone killed her. In the passive voice becomes she was killed. That's fine, because someone is a very general subject. In the active voice, if the subject is general, the general subject is not required in the passive voice. There's nothing wrong in mentioning, but not required. If I say I killed her, then must be she was killed by me, because I, the pronoun I is a very specific subject. In the active voice, the subject is general. The general subject is not required in passive voice, but nothing wrong in mentioning. If you have two options like she was killed by someone, correct? She was killed, correct. Which must be the better option here? She was killed must be the better option here, because someone is a very general subject, which is not required in the passive voice. So she was killed is fine, and was killed is was plus V3, nothing like was plus V2. V2 will never come in the passive voice. And was plus V3 is simple past in the passive voice. Getting it? Come on, next one. People love movies, active voice. The simple reason is love is V1. V1 will never come in the passive voice. Subject, verb, object, active voice. Subject plus V1 is simple present. Active voice, simple present. Passive voice also it must be simple present. And the structure of simple present in the passive voice is yes, ROM plus V3. So this sentence in the passive voice becomes movies are loved. Enough. People means all people, general subject. So in the active voice, the subject is general. So the general subject is not required in the passive voice. Now, movies are loved by people. It's correct to say. It's not required, but nothing wrong in mentioning. Movies are loved by people, correct? Movies are loved, correct. But the better option here must be movies are loved. Because people is a general subject which is not required in the passive voice. Movies are loved. R loved is R plus V3. Nothing like R plus V2. And R plus V3 is simple present passive voice. Grammatically correct. Getting it? Come next one. Thank you. Active voice or passive voice? Thank you is a statement. Full stop. The verb here is thank. V1 is thank, thanked, thanked. Thank is V1. V1 will never come in the passive voice, so undoubtedly it's active voice. Then, thank you. Thank you means you are doing the action or receiving the action? Receiving the action. Thank you means you are receiving the action. Receiver means object. Object comes at the end in passive voice. Sorry, active voice. So this sentence must be subject, verb, object, active voice. Then, thank you means I thank you. There is no need for me to look at you and say I thank you. I can just say thank you. The subject I is understood here. Thank is V1. Subject, verb, object, active voice, simple present tense. In the passive voice also it must be simple present. Simple present passive voices is ROM plus V3. So this statement, this idea in the simple present tense in the passive voice becomes you are thanked. Enough. Now, by me is not required here because I is understood in the active voice. By me will be understood in the passive voice. Thank you means I thank you. I, the pronoun I is the subject I is understood in the active voice. So by me will be understood in the passive voice. You are thanked is fine. And are thanked is R plus V3. R plus V3 is simple present in the passive voice. Getting it? No doubt? Fine. Come to these sentences now. What do you mean by an interrogative sentence? Any sentence ending with a question mark is termed as an interrogative sentence. In the active voice, if it is an interrogative sentence, in the passive voice also it must be an interrogative sentence. That means if the sentence in the active voice ends with a question mark, the sentence in the passive voice must also end with a question mark. Question mark in the active voice, question mark in the passive voice. If there's no question mark in the passive voice, without thinking must eliminate that option. Question mark in the active voice, question mark in the passive voice. Right? I have gone for a sentence here, an interrogative sentence. Who has shouted at you? Question mark. I have gone for 8 options here. Now the option that we select as the answer must be grammatically correct, undoubtedly. Right? And we have to follow the structures blindly. Who has shouted at you? That's a question. And I gave 8 options. By whom were you shouted at? Question mark. By whom are you shouted at? Question mark. You have been shouted at by whom? Question mark. By whom you have been shouted at? Question mark. By whom has you been shouted at? Question mark. By whom have you been shouted? Question mark. By whom have you been shouted at? Question mark. By whom have been you shouted at? Question mark. My question is, which of these 8 options is the answer to the given question? Must be correct in terms of structure, the tense in the category, meaning, and it must be grammatically correct, undoubtedly. Come to the statement given as a question. Who has shouted at you? Understand the meaning. Who has shouted at you means who stands for the person that shouted at you. That means who stands for the person that did the action. Doer. Doer means a subject. Subject comes at the beginning in the active voice. Who has shouted at you means you did the action or received the action. Received the action. Object. Object comes at the end in the active voice. That's based on the meaning. Then has shouted at is has plus V3. Has plus V3 is the structure of present perfect tense in the active voice. Has plus V3 is the structure of present perfect tense in the active voice. So the question is in the active voice, present perfect. The answer must be in the passive voice and it must be present perfect itself. Clear? Now the structure of present perfect in the passive voice is has or have plus been plus V3. So the option that we select as the answer must be in this structure, has or have plus been plus V3. Then shouted is a verb here, at is a preposition. So shouted at becomes a phrase. We cannot divide the words in a phrase. I told you in every perfect tense in the passive voice, what must be there? Been must be there in every perfect tense in the passive voice. Based on that, 1 and 2 are eliminated. Because in 1 and 2, been is not there. Then, Shouted at is a phrase. We cannot divide the words in a phrase. Based on that, option 6 is eliminated because shouted at is not mentioned here. So 6 is gone. So 3 options eliminated. Still, we'll discuss the first 2 options. By whom were you shouted at? Question mark. Were you shouted at is verb plus V3, and verb plus V3 is simple past in the passive voice. We want present perfect, gone. Come to the second one. By whom are you shouted at? Are you shouted at is R plus V3. R plus V3 is simple present in the passive voice. We want present perfect, eliminated. And this must be the structural sentence that we select as the option. Come to 3. You have been shouted at by whom? Question mark. You have been shouted at is have plus been plus V3. And have plus been plus V3 is present perfect, correct structure. But I say this option is eliminated. We have discussed earlier as well. Every interrogative sentence must start with a question word and end with a question mark. This sentence is ending with a question mark, that is okay. It is starting with you. You is not a question word. I repeat, every interrogative sentence must start with a question word, end with a question mark. Based on that, 3 is eliminated, grammatically wrong. Come to 4. By whom you have been shouted at, starting with a question word, ending with a question mark. Shouted at is a phrase, completely fine. You have been shouted at is have plus been plus V3, correct structure. All these are fine, but still I eliminate this option. We have discussed this rule in conditional sentences, subject of agreement, tenses, pronouns. If it is an interrogative sentence, the auxiliary verb must appear before the noun or pronoun. This is what we discussed. If it is an interrogative sentence, the auxiliary verb must always appear before the noun or pronoun. This is an interrogative sentence. You is the pronoun here. Have is the auxiliary verb here. The auxiliary verb is coming after the pronoun. If it is interrogative, the auxiliary verb must come before the pronoun. So this sentence is grammatically wrong. This sentence is grammatically wrong, eliminated. Come to the next one. By whom has you been shouted at? Question mark. Starting with a question word, ending with a question mark. Then shouted at phrase, completely fine. Has you been shouted is has plus been plus V3, present perfect in the passive voice. All these are fine, but I eliminated. If you check all the examples I gave earlier, in the passive voice, the verb depends on the subject or object. In the passive voice, the verb always depends on the object. In the active voice, the verb depends on the subject. In the passive voice, the verb depends on the object. That means in the active voice, it is subject-verb agreement. In the passive voice, it is object-verb agreement. If you go through all the sentences that I gave you, you'll understand that. Come to the question. Who has shouted at you? What is the object here? The pronoun you is the object here. In the passive voice, the verb depends on the object. With you, the verb must be singular or plural. We can never find a singular verb with you. With you, the verb must always be plural. So, has you is a wrong usage because has is a singular verb. With you, the verb must always be plural. So, option 5 is grammatically wrong, eliminated. 6 is anyway gone because shouted at, the phrase is not there in the state, gone. Come to 7. By whom have you been shouted at? Question mark. Starting with a question word, ending with a question mark, completely fine. Shouted at is a phrase, completely fine. Have you been shouted at is have plus been plus V3, present perfect. This is what we want. This is an interrogative sentence. Have is the auxiliary verb. You is the pronoun. The auxiliary verb is coming before the pronoun. Interrogative sentence, that is also completely fine. Option 7 must be considered. Leave it there because we have one more option. By whom have been you shouted at? Starting with a question word, ending with a question mark. Shouted is a phrase, completely fine. Have been shouted is have plus B plus B3. Shouted at, completely fine. Now, grammatically correct or wrong? If you check the examples I gave in the continuous category and the perfect category, been and being, been and being go along with the main verb. Main verb means action. Been and being go along with the main verb. If I take you back, perfect tense, has been slept. Slept is a main verb. Been slept. Been goes along with the main verb. Been looked into. Looked into is a main verb. Been looked into. Been goes along with the main verb. If I go to the continuous category, yes. Being bought. Bought is a main verb. Being goes along with the main verb. Being taken care of. Taken care of is a main verb. Being goes along with the main verb. So been and being go along with the main verb. That is the rule. Now come to the last option once again. By whom have been you shouted at? Shouted at is a main verb here. In this sentence, been is separated from the main verb by you. Grammatically wrong. Eliminate. The answer is option 7. By whom have you been shouted at? Clear? All the rules are completely fine. The structure remains the same. The tense in the category remain the same. The meaning remains the same. All the concepts discussed in all the topics up to now, completely satisfied, grammatically correct. The answer must be 7. So no matter what, the option that we select as the answer must be grammatically correct. The meaning must remain the same. The tense in the category must also remain the same. And you should never go wrong while identifying the tense in the category of a sentence given as a question. Clear?